serving as the Minister of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, and as a member of the National Assembly of South Africa. So Barbara, thank you, welcome, and we're excited to hear your message today.
Jennifer, thank you very much for the warm welcome, and greetings to all of you who are out there participating in this webcam. It's wonderful to share with you some of the work that we are doing here in South Africa. As you know, the 2020 has been a very challenging year for all of us. And I think for countries on the African continent, it has been particularly difficult as we have had to battle the pandemic, deal with health systems that have been considerably under strain. But I think that one of the key issues that I'm very happy about is the fact that during the course of this year, climate change and green issues generally have not been issues that have been pushed onto the back burner. Perhaps it's firstly because all of us understand that this pandemic is in many ways a dress rehearsal for the climate crisis, which is facing our continent and, of course, the world in general. Now, here in sub-Saharan Africa, we are already severely affected by the impact of climate change. We have had a prolonged drought that has gone on for many years. We have experienced extreme temperatures. We have also, in our neighbors, Mozambique, had the second largest city. Beira was completely destroyed by Cyclone Idai a little over a year and a half ago. So we are fully aware that the climate crisis is not something that can be postponed while we are dealing with the pandemic. It's something that we have to manage as we are dealing with the pandemic. There have been, I think, two exciting developments at a government level in our country. The first is that our cabinet has adopted our climate change adaptation strategy. And what this does is it lays a basis for all of our cities and all of our provinces to begin to work on how we are going to adapt everyday life to the realities of climate change. Whether those realities are water scarcity, extreme temperatures, or sea level rise, all of these plans can now go ahead and be put into place. But perhaps the most exciting development has been a decision by President Ramaphosa that we are going to set up the Presidential Climate Change Commission. Now, this is the body that is going to be responsible for negotiating amongst business, labor, civil society, and government how we are going to get to a low carbon future. Everybody knows South Africa is dependent. 90% of our energy generation is currently from coal. All of our transport system is dependent on petrol and diesel-driven vehicles. So obviously we have one of the highest carbon footprints on the African continent. And if we want to get towards a lower carbon future, we've got to look at, on the one hand, how we transition to different forms of energy generation, but we've also got to think about how in the process of doing that, we preserve jobs, but we also use the opportunities that new forms of technology create so that we are able to create new work opportunities for people. Now, obviously, the question that we have to address tonight is what can young people do to help us in our struggle against the climate crisis. And I think that, you know, my generation was the generation in South Africa that fought apartheid. And for a long time, I think that there has been a concern amongst young people. What are the current struggles that they can become involved in that will give meaning and will obviously help to create a better planet and a better world? And I think that today what we all understand is that there are three major issues that face us: the climate crisis, environmental degradation, and loss of biodiversity. Those are the three issues. And I think it's very important, as we talk about climate change, we also need to be talking about these other two issues: environmental degradation and also the issue of biodiversity loss. Because the African continent is one of the remaining places on Earth where we still have wilderness areas and where we still have considerable amount of land that is set aside for conservation and protected areas. And it's something that is itself under threat as a result of climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic that has undermined the livelihoods of many people who were dependent on conservation estates, because as dependent on tourism and foreign visitors to those areas, all of this tourist activity having been stopped as a result of the COVID pandemic. And clearly this places these wilderness areas under threat, as people living on the outskirts of them are no longer able to achieve a successful livelihood. So what can young people do? Well, the world knows about youth activists like Miss Greta Thunberg, but here in South Africa, we also have young climate activists. One such individual is 11-year-old Yola Mgogwana from Khayelitsha in Cape Town. Yola has taken it upon herself to inform her community about environmental issues and climate change, and she is educating people to stop using single-use plastics. Yola also monitors her school's electricity and water use and encourages those around her to recycle. Another young activist who is quite well known in our country is Ayaka Malitafa, who has taken the issue of climate change head on, and last year was amongst 16 young petitioners who appealed to world leaders at the United Nations to take climate change seriously, and who really made a very impassioned plea for what we call multilateralism, the acceptance that it's very important all of us should work together in dealing with issues such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and environmental degradation. And he said the approach that we have to take is that this is our world. It's not my country and your country. So, of course, not everybody who's involved in climate activities in our country are activists who are going to the UN. And I would want to say that one doesn't have to go to the UN in order to make a difference. We have young people who are working, as we've heard, in communities dealing with issues of promoting the circular economy and promoting recycling. Young people who are working on getting their own families and their own communities to monitor their water usage and their electricity consumption. And of course, young people who are now at work and who are becoming active as shareholders in holding companies to account and challenging their investments in carbon-intensive industries. Now, government realizes the importance of educating young people about the environment and about the dangers of climate change. And it's for this reason that we are working together with the Department of Basic Education to develop teachers who have a much more detailed understanding of environmental issues, so that they are able to give better content and better explanations when they deal with environmental issues in the curriculum. We are also working with 100 university students on a work integrated learning program. And we work with these young people to help them understand ways in which they can follow careers in the sciences, in the environmental sciences, and ultimately contribute through that work to a much better approach by government and by society in general. We've also got what we call the 2050 Pathways Calculator and the My 2050, which enables learners to log on and understand what interventions will be needed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the country. And through these learning programs, we're hoping to equip young people to play a more active role in their communities in combating climate change. Now, across the globe, one of the focuses that all of us have had is this issue of how do we, as a result of this pandemic, build back better? And as we recover from the pandemic, how do we find new opportunities in green industries and in new technologies? And because as a country, we have been working on our own recovery program, and because we understand that employment is a fundamental issue for many young people, we did on the 16th of June this year, which is South Africa's Youth Day, launch something that we call the Driving Force for Change Youth Pilot Initiative. And what we have been doing through this initiative is running a competition where we're asking young people to apply online for projects and programs that they believe will provide environmentally appropriate solutions to societal and community projects. We are going to select 10 finalists. We're going to support those finalists financially in setting up their programs or their projects. And we've also brought in international partners through the British High Commission and the European Union, who are going to be giving these particular young entrepreneurs technical support. I'm very excited to say that we've had a total of 272 applications, and of these we've shortlisted at this stage 158, and we will shortly be announcing different programs and different projects that we will support next year. And hopefully through this, we are going to get important programs that are going to deal with climate change adaptation, biodiversity loss, ecosystem service management, and waste management. As I conclude, I want to say that I'm sure that for many people, the enormity of the climate crisis and of biodiversity loss is in many ways very daunting. And I want to say to those of you who are South African and to those of you who are living on the African continent, it's important that others have trod on this path of combating climate change head on before you. And I'm just going to mention two of these African heroes so that they act as a source of inspiration to you. The first one is President Thomas Sankara, who in the 1980s led his people to plant a giant green wall of trees throughout Burkina Faso to stop his nation from becoming a desert wasteland. The second is Wangari Maathai, the first African woman to win the Nobel Peace Prize, who established the Green Belt Movement, an indigenous grassroots organization that continues to fight against deforestation and climate change in East Africa. These are two significant heroes who, at a time when very few people understood the issues involved, stood up and led their communities in the struggle against desertification and against climate change. Let me leave you with a quote from the father of our nation, Nelson Mandela. And he said, "Sometimes it falls upon a generation to be great. You can be that generation. let your greatness blossom. I thank you.
Quite a lovely message. Thank you so much, Minister Creecy, for joining us today and inspiring students, not only in South Africa, but from all around the world. We're honored to have you.
Thank you so much, Minister Creecy. Thank you so much for that wonderful message indeed.